Homeschooling, I think, is a lot of people are homeschooling these days because, again, schools are closed because of Corona. And I think just a few months back, not many people knew what homeschooling was. But now the whole country, the whole world has got a taste of homeschooling. And because of this pandemic, a lot of people are thinking whether to homeschool at least for another year, till the whole school year. And some are considering homeschooling in the long run. Also, a lot of people have lost jobs and or have had job cuts, and they've been considering homeschooling because it is a more pocket friendly option if you want it to be. So I'm just going to wait for more people to hop in before I start. So yeah, what are the things to consider? Now I'll tell you a little about myself. I am Chandana Banerjee and I am a homeschooling parent, and I'm also a solopreneur. So I write books, I write blogs and articles, and I'm an artist by profession, and I'm also a health coach and micro business coach for women. Now, we've been homeschooling for a little over maybe 2.5 years. And the reason why we got into homeschooling was solely because our son didn't really enjoy his schooling experience. So we were posted in this very small place, small town, and he was going to one of those franchisee preschools. And they had a lot of writing work. There was a lot of, copy work in that. And he just didn't enjoy sitting in one place and writing. So that is when he used to really hate going to school, and he would cry every day, he would cry at night. So even though we sent him for a few months, we had to keeping him back at home every now and then. And when we went to the next place, we were posted in Delhi for a short while. So he went to a very nice Montessori school there. And he really used to enjoy the hands-on activities there. But after 6 months, there were some logistical issues. Plus, my husband started getting TDs, which is like he was moving to different cities for his job, and we accompanied him. So during this time, I started teaching him in the hotel room itself. And he really started enjoying learning, and he wanted to learn at home. So when we got posted to another small place, we decided to try homeschooling for a bit, because in this current place, in this current military base that we're posted, there is just one or two schools here, and none of them really, at least none of them that really I feel that that he really needs to go to. So we've started homeschooling him, and now it's almost 2.5 years he's being homeschooled. And for us, this option works much better than going to school. There was a day when I would actually wonder whether we could put him back in school. But now, after 2.5 years of doing it, having certain routines and rituals in it, I'm really enjoying this whole process of homeschooling. It's not easy every day. There are days when I feel that I'd rather not homeschool, or I wish I could take a break from it. But those days are fewer and far between. So more or less, this is our homeschooling story. Now, for me and my son, we both, I was always interested in homeschooling, and my son wanted to be homeschooled. But for a lot of people who probably are watching this, or who will eventually watch this, homeschooling, a lot of people have come to homeschooling for different reasons. One is the pandemic. Schools are closed, so everybody per force is homeschooling. And some because again, even when the schools open, the virus will remain outside. People are considering that maybe for another year or two, let us homeschool and see whether this works out for us. For some, people have lost jobs, and they've had job cuts. So they are thinking that this homeschooling is a more affordable option. So for whatever reason, and for others, for some of you, if you're considering homeschooling just like that, in the long run, then there are a few questions. There are about, I would say, 5-6 questions that you need to ask yourself before you decide to homeschool, maybe in the long run. Okay. So one of the main questions that you need to ask yourself is, why are you homeschooling, or why are you thinking of homeschooling? Of course, currently with the pandemic, the reason is, of course, schools are closed, or that you may not want to send your child back to school whenever the schools reopen. But if you're thinking of homeschooling for more than a year, what is your reason? Is it because there are no good schools around where you're living? Or is it because your child, like my son, doesn't enjoy the school experience? Or you feel that he's not really learning all that much by just sitting on a desk the whole day and copying what the teacher is writing? So what is your main reason? Or do you actually believe that maybe you can provide a better quality education at home? So first, think of your main reason for doing so. Why are you homeschooling, or why are you even considering homeschooling in the long run? My second question that I ask myself, and I would say that every homeschooling or every prospective homeschooling can ask themselves is, are you ready to dedicate a chunk of time, a chunk of your whole day to homeschooling? Remember that when your child goes to school, you have these 3 to 5 to 6 hours or 8 hours to yourself to do whatever it is that you wish to do. But if you homeschool, you will not get that time, especially if your children are small. So when I started homeschooling, my son was in UKG, and he pretty much needed a lot of attention, and he wanted me to be sitting next to him, doing things with him. And it initially, since I work from home, I would miss my work from home, the solid chunks of time. But as we are proceeding in this, I have found ways to work around it. I think last week, yeah, I had done a workshop, online Facebook Live, about ways to find time even if you're homeschooling and working from home. So do refer to that. You can just scroll down my account to see that video. But currently, so one thing you have to make up your mind, that you will not get a chunk of time if just for yourself if you're homeschooling at home. Once you embrace that fact, it gets easier because you find other ways to get time for yourself. But this is a question that you have to consider. For all of you who've been homeschooling just during this pandemic, I think all of you have already experienced it, this lack of time. I think I'm hearing a lot of moms say that they're missing their me time, and they're missing the time that, they spend with their friends or watching a movie, and or those who work from home, they miss that sanctity of working alone. So definitely consider, are you ready to dedicate that solid chunk of time for homeschooling? My other question for yourself will be, will homeschooling make you happy? Because, of course, every day, even if you say yes to this, there will be days when you're not too happy about homeschooling, or you're frustrated with the process. But will homeschooling make you happy? This is something that you have to consider. Because if you feel that in the long run, it is only going to make you more grumpy or make you irritable, then there is no point getting into it for the long term. Because if you are unhappy, you will pass on that vibe to your child. We tend to take out a frustration on the kids if we are unhappy. So that even if the quality of education is better, if you're spending the whole day cooped up inside, feeling grumpy, that's not really a good vibe to pass on in our homeschool. Another question to consider is, are you willing to give homeschooling a try? Of course, that question gets negated in today's time because everybody has got a taste of homeschooling. They know whether they have the stamina for it in the long term or not. Again, there's another way to look at it. Currently, because everybody's forced to homeschool, people know there is no other option. But if you had an option, would you still be willing to give homeschooling a try? That is a question you need to ask yourself. Even when the pandemic gets over, even when the schools are open, when that option to send your kids to school is there, would you still opt for homeschooling? So think about this, because your willingness to try it is really important. If you're not willing to try it, then homeschooling can actually become a drudgery, and it can become a chore. Another question to consider is, will homeschooling make your child happy? So if there are some kids who really enjoy school, they enjoy wearing a school uniform, they enjoy going to school, playing with other kids, interacting, doing assignments in a class together, interacting with their teachers. My son is not that kind of child. He's never really enjoyed school, and we really had to push him. When he was going to school, we really had to push him to go to school. So for him, it has been a very easy transition being homeschooled. But if your child enjoys going to school, this is a question you have to really sit down and talk with your child. Whether he would want to learn at home, he would like to spend the whole day at home, or he would instead prefer going to school, even if you feel that you might be able to give him a better quality education at home. So this is a question, this is a joint decision. Even if your kids are small, I will suggest that you sit down and talk to your child and decide whether you want to whether he wants to stay home or whether he would prefer going to school, and whether he really enjoys his schooling experience or not. Another question to ask is, are you willing to take all the questions and all the prejudices that come your way as a homeschooling parent? Yes, and there are many. Of course, I think the pandemic might have changed everything. I'm not sure. After the pandemic gets over, we'll realize whether things have changed or not. But before the pandemic happened, I have got all kinds of questions and comments from people because I homeschool. Of course, things are becoming better every day, and I'm just hoping that everybody having had tried homeschooling will ask fewer ridiculous questions to homeschooling parents. But the kind of questions you get, the kind of people, just because, like I feel that just because I homeschool, a lot of people feel they have the right to come and impose their opinion on me because I'm doing something which not everybody is. So there are questions like people ask me, oh, so when are you finally going to start sending him to school? I think you need to send him to school. Or people say, oh, he takes time to open up to people, maybe because he's being homeschooled. Of course, none of it is true. Even when you meet school-going kids, you meet shy kids, but nobody tells them anything. And I think it's just a myth that children are better socialized and they mix better when they start going to school. I think it's a total myth. But of course, that doesn't stop others from telling you things and from asking you totally ridiculous questions. For example, a question that I often get is, how do you make your son stay at home? How do you make him sit at home and do your lessons? So what do I say? I chain him to the chair and make him sit? No, of course not. But that is what I feel like saying. So, like I said, my son enjoys being homeschooled. But if you get into homeschooling after the pandemic is over, after the schools are over, of course, there will be comments. There is absolutely not two ways about it. People will ask ridiculous questions. They will comment. They will feel the right to comment on this choice that you've made. But it is up to you to keep your cool. And but this is something you also need to brace yourself up for. Sometimes when I'm going into a new crowd, I always brace myself up for all the questions and the comments that will come my way. And often they do. Sometimes they don't, which is a bonus then. So if you're homeschooling, be prepared for all the ridiculous comments. In fact, now a lot of people, when I say I homeschool, people assume that I'm homeschooling because of the pandemic. But then when I say no, I am homeschooling in the long run, they say things like, oh, so you mean you were homeschooling you were homeschooling even before the pandemic, before the lockdown, but why? So yes, there will be lots of whys and whats and hows. So take that in your stride. So these were the six questions. Let me just recap it for those who joined in late. Some of the questions to consider: one, why are you homeschooling, or why are you thinking of homeschooling? What is the crux of your reason? Second, are you ready to dedicate a solid chunk of time to homeschooling? Which means that you will also lose out a huge chunk of your me time or your work from home time. Third, will homeschooling make you happy? Because if you are unhappy in the long run, you will pass that unhappy, grumpy vibe to the child too. And that's not really a very good addition to your homeschool. So will homeschooling make you happy? Fourth, are you willing to give homeschooling a try, even when the schools open? So give yourself think of this. When you have the schools open, when you can send your kids to school, will you still be willing to take the time out of your schedule to homeschool at home? So that's a question you need to consider. Fifth, will homeschooling make your child happy? If your child is outgoing, whether he prefers just being in school on all the chaos of school life, then well, maybe he's more suited to that. But if you feel that your child can adjust to homeschooling life, this is a decision you need to sit down with your child and make. My sixth question that you need to ask yourself is, are you willing to take all the questions and prejudices in your stride? There will be questions, there will be ridiculous comments, no doubt about that. But are you willing to face it? Are you willing to get out of your comfort zone and know that any party you go to, any social gathering you go to, any new person you meet to, there is a chance that they will ask you something which can annoy you or may not. But there might be questions. So these were the 6 questions that you need to consider if you are thinking of homeschooling even after the lockdown is over and the schools are open, whether it is for 1 year, 2 years, or for permanently. So I hope you found that useful. If you have any questions about homeschooling, please write that in the comment section and I will try to answer it right now. Okay, now before now one thing that I wanted to invite all of you watching is I'm about to launch my book, which is called Queen of the At-Home Lifestyle. It is getting launched on 3rd of July. But before that, today I wanted to do a pre-launch giveaway. Now for the giveaway, what I wanted to ask you is, it's a small contest, and the question is, can you suggest an effective and interesting hashtag that I can use in my book launch campaigns? So my question is, my book, the name of my book is Queen of the At-Home Lifestyle. And it is all about working from home, homeschooling and homemaking, and creating a satisfying, joyful life within the walls of your home. So can you suggest an effective hashtag, an effective and interesting hashtag that I can use during my book launch campaign for my book? Of course, it needs to have the name of my book. The name of my book is Queen of the At-Home Lifestyle. And I will be making a separate post on that, and you can leave your answers there. But if you have an answer here, of course, do jot it down. Any hashtag that I can use to promote this book. The hashtag that I finally choose will win a copy of my book. I will email it to you, a digital copy of my ebook. Okay, Swati asks, how many hours do you keep aside each day for homeschooling? So Swati, again, how many hours you keep aside for your child will depend on the age of your child and the activities you're doing. I keep aside 3 to 4 hours. See, now when I homeschool, currently my husband and I, to homeschool, we share our homeschooling duties. So of course, which means that there are certain subjects that he handles and certain subjects that I handle, which means that I can we kind of divide the time. So if earlier I would be homeschooling him for 4 or 5 hours, my son is 7 years old and in class 2. So if I would be homeschooling him for 5-6 hours earlier. Now I would spend maybe 3 hours I will spend for his homeschooling, and 2-3 hours my husband will spend during the afternoon and evenings for his homeschooling. I teach subjects like Hindi, the languages, Hindi, English, environmental science, and I also go over natural science, and we do a lot of art-based work. So art and craft is a major part. In fact, I start with art and craft just to set it in motion, and we read a lot of storybooks. That is my domain. My husband handles science and maths, and after tackling concepts, they also every day work on a hands-on science project made out of trash from around the house. So I would say, depending on whether you're home, two things to consider. If you're homeschooling alone on your own, then you will have to spend more time on your homeschooling. But if you and your spouse or your partner are sharing the homeschooling duties, then of course you will have to spend fewer hours, and you can still create a work from home schedule around that. Any other questions? Hi, Loretta. Thanks. You should also get this new look done, Loretta. You've got curly hair, it'll look nice. Loretta, any questions about homeschooling? Anybody else? So all of you who joined in late, I have a contest happening right now. Do share your answers here or on the post, which is, I'm launching my new book on 3rd of July. It's called Queen of the At-Home Lifestyle. Please suggest a hashtag that I can use in my campaigns. The hashtag that I use will win a digital copy of my ebook. So everybody, welcome. We were in fact just wrapping up. Our workshop is just over, but do check out the replay. And I will be having a launch party, a book release launch party next week. So do join in for that. And if you have any questions about homeschooling or working from home, do share your questions here, and I will try to answer either in my next week's FB Live or in the comment section. So I will have a good weekend. Okay, Aparna has asked, how do you decide the scope of what to teach? So the way Aparna, do check out, I've got a YouTube video on that of how I lesson plan and the guidelines I'm using. So this year, let me tell you what I did. Neil, my son, is in class 2, and I basically just took the CBSE curriculum. I borrowed some textbooks from a friend's son who has just gone to class 3. So I was using class 2 textbooks. I looked at it. I honestly find a lot of the textbooks very boring. So we just look at it, but then I just look at it as a framework and use online resources, since we are in a very small place where I can't, and we're also of course in lockdown, so we can't really go out to do live classes. What I do is I go online, look for online virtual field trips, YouTube videos, art projects, craft projects, and I use and movies, documentaries on Netflix and Amazon, and storybooks on that, and I use all of it together to teach my lessons. Thank you, Loretta. Thank you. So I am wrapping up for now, and I will see you next week. And do join me at my book launch party here at Facebook Live. Have a good weekend. All the best. Bye bye.